This Season 3 finale is brought to you by Main Street Windows, a complete guide to Disney's whimsical tributes by yours truly, Jeff Heimbach. Available now at orchardhillpress.com for signed copies and also wherever books are sold, such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and more.
Communicore Weekly, wanna get geeky, bob around boats and five-legged goats. Communicore Weekly, you might get some freaky. Waited all week, I'm sure you already know this. Greatest online show. Welcome to Season 3.
Hello, and welcome to Communicore Weekly, the greatest online show and home of the world's first pair of independently born identical twins. I'm George.
And I'm Jeff, and it's the Season 3 finale, George. Can you believe it?
Not at all.
We've been doing this for a very long time now.
Yep, and do we have a cliffhanger for this one? Let me go through the script. I can't remember.
You can scroll down to the bottom, but spoiler alert.
Oh, crap, we have a... Ooh.
Wait, we do?
What?
We have a cliffhanger?
You didn't look at the end of the script yet?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll just continue. This is the Season 3 finale, meaning Season 4 is coming up, and...
Prepare yourselves. Season 4 is coming. Just like winter.
Just like winter.
Just like winter.
Not the Winter Soldier.
It's been a really good year for us here at Communicore Weekly, and Season 4 is going to be an even better year. And we have a lot of stuff that's coming up, a lot of new stuff to talk about. We also have a pretty big change that we're going to talk about at the end of the show after the five-legged goat. So be sure you stick around. I mean, you don't have to listen to our crazy banter before the exit of the show. I understand that. But listen for the change stuff. That stuff's important.
You know, I think the exciting thing, we said 2014 was a good year for Communicore Weekly.
Yes.
2015 is going to be a fantastic year for the cadets.
Yes. We don't care about us. We care about you guys. Clearly.
Ooh, we should have T-shirts that say that.
We care about you. That's all it's going to say. But let's not talk about Season 4 yet, because we got to end Season 3. Yes. So let's jump into the history segment.
It's the 50th anniversary of the 64 World's Fair and the 49th anniversary of the 1965 part.
So last week on episode 155, we had the first half of the interview that we did with Ryan Ritchey, who was the director of After the Fair, the amazing documentary about what happened to some of the pavilions after the 1964-65 New York World's Fair. This week, we continue with the second half to wrap up our World's Fair segment for Season 3. Well, every time I run across an image that I see online, and you had a big segment on in the film about the lamps or the lighted posts from the World's Fair. The actual name of them is blanking right now. They were supposed to
luminaries.
That's it.
Luminaires. That's it.
They were supposed to help direct people, and from what I understand, it just didn't work. It was too hard of a signal. Do you have any of those, and can I have one?
Well, I know where there are several of them.
Communicore Weekly Field Trip. Oh, yeah. So that to me, that's one of the more interesting relics, something that you could actually have at your house, Right.
Well, and what was weird about doing this movie, I mean, the fair was 50 years ago, and I thought, this is sort of timeless at this point. Things aren't going to change, that we need to go back and revisit parts of the movie. But the lights were one of those things where, because many of them are on parcels of land that are either up for sale or have tax liens against them, that I had to keep checking now and then and say, okay, are they still there? Are those lights still there? Are they gone?
Just to be sure.
Just to be sure. So, and then of course we didn't cover this in the movie, but the HMS Bounty, which was a ship on display at the fair, it was originally from Mutiny on the Bounty, the movie, long before the fair occurred. That sank as Superstorm Sandy approached, I believe it was. So,
yes, that's right.
And that we were in talks when it got to Massachusetts on its next docking was when we were supposed to shoot some footage of the boat.
Ooh.
And never got there. And I started to think that maybe this project was doomed because that was about the same time as the ski lodge fire.
Oh.
So, and we went to, it may have been the restaurant, revolving restaurant, and we showed up, and they were like, well, weren't you at the place before it burned down? Like, they were a little nervous.
There's only one logical explanation for all that. Michael Eisner.
Fire? Oh, yes, Michael Eisner was following you around. That's exactly
Of
what it
course.
was.
So, if it wasn't clear before to people, but if they walk away from the movie thinking, Epcot Center is totally the 1964-1965 World's Fair, why do you think that Disney themselves kind of adopted that into the Epcot Center design when they were initially making it?
Well, I really think when Walt Disney died and they sort of had to take his sprawling vision for Epcot, which would have been incredible to see, and sort of boil that down to what became Epcot Center, I think it was really easy to look to the fair, and there was a lot of design shorthand there. And I know it was important because sponsors understood the model from the World's Fair. Now, granted, there had been sponsors at Disneyland, but they were able to go back to people like GM and say, hey, you remember when we used to do those World's Fairs and how you had that great big pavilion? Let's do that at Epcot. So I think it really helped them accelerate the development of Epcot Center when that became the plan moving forward versus the original Epcot vision.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought of that. Sort of like just a wow. Let me start that one all over again. Let me move on to another question at this point in time. So it's one that Jeff had written down, but I'm going to go ahead and steal it. Why do you think they didn't move all of the Magic Skyway back to Disneyland?
I think at some point it may have been as simple as a footprint issue. I mean, that was a large attraction, and I don't think I would put that in Adventureland. Fantasyland. If you're just selling the Ford vehicles, I'm not sure where it would have fit in best.
They've got this little park across the way now that they're doing beautifully, and finally give you something to do. I'm talking about Animal Kingdom.
Oh, of course, you are.
But there are little things that I've noticed in talking to some of the Imagineers that we interviewed. I couldn't really get them to fess up to all of the sort of nods to the World's Fair, but one to think about the next time you're at Epcot. When you're on Spaceship Earth, which of course was originally sponsored by Bell, Spaceship Earth has that kind of unique design where you have the speakers up near your ears. It's a little bit closer to your head than, say, the Omnimover speakers. That is very similar to the Bell Telephone Pavilion at the fair that had these little adjustable cups that came up near your ears on each side. And so I think there might be some little design nods here and there.
And you have an example of that in the film as well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, that's kind of really weird.
Yeah.
Did somebody clean these before I put them on my head, please? Please? I'm not going to do this thing. Thank you very much. Oh, wow.
And the other fun thing about that pavilion, we were speaking about Horizons earlier, with the Bell Telephone Pavilion, at least partially, your chair sort of moved sideways. So it was similar to how, in Horizons, you would move sideways through all the scenes.
That makes a lot of sense in hindsight.
Interesting.
Wow.
So, in the course of making this film, I'm sure you researched tons and tons of things that didn't make it into the film itself. Were there any ones that really stood out where things wound up that, just you cut for one reason or another?
Well, there was, where to begin? There were some sculptures that ended up at different universities. One that was interesting, there is a house in New Jersey that has, I believe it's for sale, but it hasn't, hopefully it won't get torn down. Basically, the folks who owned the house, they were contractors who were responsible for demolition of different things and at the fair. And so the house basically was made up of components of different things from the fair. So you would have a spiral staircase that may have come from, say, the Japan Pavilion, for example. And so you have all these little things in one place like that. We had things like the totem poles from the Alaska Pavilion are outside a museum in Connecticut. And we went to La Ronde up in Montreal, which is unfortunately now a Six Flags park. Not to offend any.
It's always unfortunate when something's a Six Flags park. We understand.
Which, of course, is on the site of the '67 World's Fair, but there's a carousel there that had originally been at the fair, and it's just a bunch of little things that we were thinking. We don't want this to become a listy thing where we say, "Hey, this was in the fair, now it's there." So we try to stick to some of the bigger items. Which, by the way, one of my favorites that I didn't mention earlier is the Wisconsin Pavilion, which half of it is back in Wisconsin, where it's a radio station and cheese shop.
Which is amazing, by the way.
Yes.
And the other half is a kids' camp in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So, and we basically virtually brought them back together again.
Well, to kind of branch off of what you just said about including these big things in the film, and you didn't want it just to be a list of things. I don't know how you did it, but you made this fantastic narrative out of the entire thing. Like, you made it a story. It wasn't just a list of things that, here's where this is now, here's where this is now. There was a story behind everything, and it just really brought the film together really, really nicely, and I was super duper impressed with how you did that. Mostly I'm trying to say I hate you because that was brilliant, and there was no way I would have been able to do that myself.
I'm just writing this down for the cover. Super Duper, I believe was the word.
It was Super Duper, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, got it.
Probably, I would hyphenate Super Duper. But
A+ would buy again.
Yes, A++, great seller, would buy from again. So talk a little briefly about the journey of the making of the film. Why was it important to you, really, to get this stuff out there, to make people know, where this stuff is now?
Well, here's where the journey started. My first interview for the movie was with Rolly Crump. And
Who?
so
I've never heard that name before in my life.
Who?
And so we go, and this gentleman Crump, I don't know, he something with a Museum of the Weird or something, but we
Sounds boring.
We go and we talk to him, which he's so gracious with his time and has wonderful stories to tell about the fair. I don't need to tell you guys. He's filled with stories.
What do you mean?
Which would make a great book or audiobook that I find to be super duper, but I don't want to plug other products. So that was our first interview, and I'm sitting in Rolly's house, and we're doing this interview, and I'm just like, I can't believe it. If we don't shoot another day of film for this thing, and it never sees the light of day, I'm good. This is good.
That's the whole movie right there.
And so we're wrapping up with him, and he says, well, there's someone else you really should talk to while you're out here. I said, okay. He said, well, Bob. Hey, Marie, can you get Bob's number? I'm like, oh, okay, Bob. I'll go talk to Bob. And, of course, it turned out to be Bob Gurr, and who you may know. They've heard of that name, too.
Maybe. I'm not. It doesn't ring a bell right now, though.
And so each time we would talk to somebody, they would send us to someone else. And it just became this journey of one person leads to three more people.
It's a nice snowball effect.
Exactly.
Did Marty call because he was jealous and wanted to be in the movie too?
Did he want any changes?
Yes. Did he say I've got some notes for you?
Especially in that Carousel of Progress section.
Yeah, we need more Marty. Much more Marty.
I am thrilled for Marty Sklar participating in this project.
That's true. No, it was really a good segment with it.
I'm sorry. I just
go ahead.
Said about Journey. It reminded me one of the things that my wife and I got to do, and this is a wedding, a marriage test. If you ever want to do this, we had a 3-week road trip in the car every single day to visit all of these places in the Midwest where different things from the fair were today. So we actually went up along the edges of all of the Great Lakes in the car. Wow. It's like 12 hours a day in the car, hop out, shoot some footage of something, get back in the car, and go for another 12 hours.
And remember to take the lens cap off.
So I guess the next question is, how did you two not kill each other?
Or did you buy her a big diamond? Or I don't know what women like, obviously. But anyway.
I was amazed that we made it through, and it was probably maybe the most peaceful 3 weeks. When we got back, I kind of wish we'd get back in the car.
Fair enough.
Who knew? So that's my advice.
Yes, marital advice from Mr. Ritchey.
Yes.
Okay, so looking at the litany of attractions and objects, all the different things that came out of the World's Fair, did you have a white whale? Something that you heard existed but you could never find, or something that you couldn't confirm in any of your searches?
That's a great question. I would say the biggest white whale, the biggest Loch Ness monster out there, it's the AMF monorail and the monorail cars.
Oh, yeah.
The cars went to Hitchcock, Texas, where they were stored in a former blimp storage facility. There was a businessman who intended to sell them to the Houston International Airport that was being built at the time. That deal fell through, and nobody knows what happened to the cars now. About 10 years ago, a photo surfaced, or it's longer than 10 years ago, a photo surfaced of one of these cars in someone's yard where they had made it into this play thing for their kids.
How dare they?
I know. That one is gone. And speaking to the family of that businessman, they said that they thought a few of them had been around Houston, and they were made into like taco stands. But I couldn't get that confirmed. But there still could be a pile of monorail cars somewhere outside of Houston.
Quickly, to the Google Maps.
Yeah, I was like,
it's funny you should say that. I spent about 4 hours one day taking my virtual road trip, just clicking next on Google Maps, going around Hitchcock, Texas, looking for something in somebody's backyard or whatever I could see from the road. You know?
I guess that was the businessman's name Tex Richmond? Very obscure Muppets reference for.
We'll take it.
Listeners.
Fair
We'll
enough.
go from there. I just assumed they had been converted into bowling alleys somewhere.
Oh boy.
You know, that's just about
Could
all
be
I can
true.
say.
So to kind of wrap this up and wind this down, what would you say to people to convince them to purchase your film, aside from us telling them that they need to purchase their film? How would you...
Oh, and telling people you've got hungry children doesn't work either.
Yes.
We tried that technique. That ploy doesn't make a difference. We have to buy shoes. That doesn't make... Nobody cares. Nobody cares. But what would you use? What would you do? Because we might learn something.
Elimination here. You already took the good ones.
The top two. I'm sorry we took them all.
Here's what I would say. We really tried to make this a love letter to the fair. So for people who were out there and went to the fair, this is a chance to go back. It's also kind of like, I hate to say Maury Povich because it's not a paternity test. But
I was going to say,
it's sort of like
we've got the 1939 World's Fair here
Exactly.
and the Chicago Railroad Fair, and we're going to find out who's the daddy.
Exactly. So the point would be that for a lot of people, it's almost like a first love, and so they're seeing their first love again, and then we're like, hey, guess what? Your first love is still here. Let's bring her out. She might be Skype now instead of the Bell Picture phone, and she might be Google instead of the IBM search engine for this headline and news. But the fair still exists. So for people who went to the fair, I would encourage them to buy this movie to sort of rekindle that feeling they had when they went to the fair. Because one of the things is when you ask people if they went to the fair, they never hesitate. They remember, even if they just went for one day, they say, oh yeah, I went to that fair. No one ever says, gee, I wonder if we went to that fair. I can't remember. For those of us who were too young to have gone to the fair, I would say that what we try to do with this movie is really show you ways to impress friends and family and say, well, that came from the World's Fair. And so you can win bar bets with this movie. Will that work? Is that better?
I like that one. I'm going to write that one down for later.
That on the cover, though.
No, I would.
You would?
Win
Okay,
bar
okay.
arguments. Jeff Heimbach.
By the studio.
So for those of us who were too young to attend, to just get a chance to see what it was all about and really appreciate the things we have today that really spawned out of that fair and what happened. And some of the surprise stories, like here's a teaser for everyone. There's a Jim Henson connection to the fair, for example.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, there is.
That's true.
But you'll have to buy it to get that one. And speaking of buying it, Ryan, where can they find the film on the internets these days?
Well, they can find it on finer websites like worldsfairmovie.com, where it's available on DVD, also as a digital download there, and on Vimeo.
Yes.
Just if I may make an extra plug, buy the DVD because the bonus content on it is totally worth it as well. Because, I mean, I sat down and I watched the film, it was over, and I was like, I'm not done with the fair yet. And then I watched all the bonus content on the DVD as well. And it was great. It brought me back to the fair that I was never actually at, but it was great to actually experience it as it was. So thanks for that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming on the show and to help us wrap up our World's Fair stuff for the third season of Communicore Weekly. We super duper appreciate it. And again, the movie's fantastic.
Yes.
You guys really need to see it. Ryan, you did an amazing job. I've told you that like 1,000 times already, but it's really, really good. So thank you so much for coming on. George, any parting thoughts from you?
No, not at all. I think it was fantastic. People that never experienced the fair, it's a beautiful way to actually feel like you were there experiencing part of it. Without the heat, without the smells, without all the weird people walking around you.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Thank you again, Ryan, for coming on.
Sure. Thank you, guys. We'll do it again in 50 years.
He's a nerd, he's a geek, but we all like to hear him speak. So listen up to the words from his speech. It's George's Book of the Week.
This week's book is The Unofficial Guide, The Color Companion to Walt Disney World by Bob Selinger and Len Testa. Okay, so this is one of the two of the more well-known travel guides for Walt Disney World. Of course, there's always been the official guide from Birnbaum, or you were the unofficial guide user, sort of like Star Wars versus Star Trek, which I guess is sort of blurred now that J.J. Abrams is doing all of it. Yeah, I figured you were one or the other. Up until, about 2010 or so, Disney was pretty strict about using photographs in their guidebooks, and of course, other books, for that matter, about Disney. And once they finally relinquished their hold, the unofficial guide jumped in with a guide full of color photographs, basically.
Yeah. So the unofficial guide has always been a really good resource for people looking to get a look at vacationing tips at Walt Disney World. And the information included in them have always been great, and it's just been a fantastic resource. But now that they have the added bonus of these photographs, the unofficial color companion is an even better product than before.
Yeah, so they talk about in the first part of the book that the unofficial guides, each one of them, they all serve different audiences, which is why they have the flagship title, the one they've been publishing for over 30 years, the one with kids, the color companion, etc. And they were really talked about how each book served their respective audiences pretty well, and that if they added photographs into one and added information about kids in the main one, it would sort of muddle and weaken their really, really strong product. Okay, why would anyone choose the color companion itself over the other unofficial guidebooks?
Well, for starters, there is a lot of snark, and for you listeners of Communicore Weekly, you know how much we love snark. We are snark machines. And the book is just filled with a bunch of comedy bits and jokes, and is meant for a more laughter-prone audience who don't take things too seriously, I guess. That said, some of the jokes are a little too over the top sometimes. And for people, I mean, this book is meant as a guidebook for people who really haven't been to Walt Disney World before. So if they don't really know the resorts and in and outs, they may be looking to book at the Frozen Resort, not realizing that there is no Frozen Resort. So they may book a vacation from Shady Tom's Vacation Deals, show up at the Frozen Resort and realize no such thing exists. So be careful, guys.
Yeah. I was really surprised to see the humor throughout the book. It is pretty broad, I guess, because they have to appeal to a larger audience, but Jeff makes a very good point. This book is really good for newbies, so to speak, or people who haven't been there in a while, and that could be a little confusing to some people. Still, the Color Companion is really a really great resource for people who haven't been in a while, or this might be their first trip. It's not as detailed as the unofficial guide, so it won't scare people away, but it still offers a tremendous amount of information. Not all of it pixie dusted either, so we like that ourselves. I do like how the guidebook has broken down the resorts, separate sections on hotels, the theme parks, etc., with smaller subsections devoted to each individual attraction, including, there's photos, which is great, but it gives you an appeal by age, tells you how long the average queue is going to be, and whether or not they really like it.
Yeah. And even without being overly detailed, I mean, it is still pretty detailed, especially for a first-time visitor. Veteran Walt Disney World visitors probably won't get too much out of it except for the humor, but it's definitely a plus to have for first-timers. And, you'll be able to figure out what is appropriate for you by going through this guide and, plan out a great trip using their tips.
Yeah, one of the main reasons that you'd want to buy any of the unofficial guides is the fact that the editors do offer a solid opinion. If they think something is crap, they'll tell you, basically. But they'll also let you know when something is really good, really worth waiting in line. For first-time visitors in particular, avoiding an attraction that's rated as, so-so or poor can really save you a lot of time, effort, and money at Walt Disney World. And beyond the attractions themselves, they also look at each and every place to eat. Each place to eat, basically, including the food carts, because dining is such an important part of any vacation.
I think we have a 310 at the Fantasyland food cart, so we better not miss that reservation there. So, overall, really great resource for people who are going for the first time or may not have been in a really long time and kind of need a refresher course for it. And again, veterans may not get much out of it. But it's really not geared towards veterans of Walt Disney World. It's if you're planning a Walt Disney World vacation soon and you haven't been there in a while or you haven't been there, I would definitely recommend picking up the unofficial guide colored companion.
Now, did we mention it's in color?
Did we mention that?
This week's book is the unofficial guide, the color companion to Walt Disney World.
What we liked, what we didn't like, yays and the booze. 60-second review.
So for this week's 60-second review, we're going to talk about the documentary After the Fair by Ryan Ritchey.
Because Ryan's not here anymore, so now we can totally talk about it.
I was waiting for him to pop in. No, he didn't.
Okay, I was waiting that pause too, just to be sure he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
That was some time ago. Anyway, okay. So, we've been covering a lot of the World's Fair here on Communicore Weekly during the third season. Yay! Because it's so awesome and so cool. One thing that we've run across even during our research is we're both just amazed at all the information that's actually out there itself. I know one of the things that we both wish is that we could have experienced the fair to some extent.
Quick to the Swan Boat Time Machine.
Bill Connor, Bill Young, who put out some amazing books on the subject, but it's just not quite the same as seeing it in real life or even in moving video, moving picture images. We both received review copies of After the Fair, the legacy of the 1964-65 New York World's Fair, and I have to admit we were both very excited.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys know, we've been talking about it all year now. We are obsessed with the fair and everything that it stood for, and just everything about it. It's just amazing to us, and we can't get enough of it. We read so many books on it, and we watched, so many newsreels that were made that are on YouTube now. But the one thing that we don't hear a lot about is the stuff that happened after the fair. And I know we covered a bit of it in the interview with Ryan this week and the week before. But this film, After the Fair, it really takes you on a journey to see how some of the parts of the fair lived on well after it closed its doors in 1965.
Yeah, it's one of the most intriguing and accessible projects that I've seen related to the World's Fair. Ryan actually spent several years working on the film, and he created a work that not only lets us see into the fair, but also where and how we can still enjoy parts of the fair today. He covers the entire country, basically, to track down information about some of these last remnants and how they are being used today or not being used, as the case may be. I'm talking about the luminaries that I still want one for
I know you
birthday.
want one.
So
if I can find one for the cheap, I'll totally get one for you
Oh,
and
okay.
one for me.
Oh, that'd be great. Get a twofer.
Yes, heck yes. 2-for-1 Luminaries. But yeah, I can't even, fathom the amount of research and time that went into making this project. I mean, Ryan, literally traveled the world to find these things, and he did an amazing job. And to me, it's just interesting to see how many of these things litter the country that are from the fair, and no one even knows. I mean, we talked about it during the interview too, but the Skyway buckets from the fair at Six Flags Great Adventure, from my home theme park, my entire life I was riding them, and I didn't even realize it until about a year or two ago. But it was still cool to see them featured in the movie. Like, hey, this is a piece of history that people are riding in New Jersey.
Which doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So yeah, so Ryan, he not only does he share the rides and an occasional statue, but he's tracked down entire buildings from various pavilions. In some cases, most cases, aren't even being used as originally planned. The Wisconsin Pavilion, the New England Pavilion, the Spain Pavilion.
The Imagination Pavilion? No, not that one. Sorry.
Though I'm not sure that's being used for much nowadays anyway.
That's true.
Bazing! Okay, anyway. Just burn Disney. We shouldn't have done that. We're in trouble now. Okay, so back to the pavilions. They're not being used today for what you might be thinking they're being used for. Anyway, that was almost a Princess Bride reference.
It almost was.
Almost was. So Ryan even tracks down a few rides that might surprise you. And to me, the most interesting tidbits outside of the Disney part, which was a fairly large part of the film, were the Sinclair dinosaurs, which were awesome to see them spread out across the country, and the Gas Pavilion. The Gas Pavilion was pretty darn cool.
I was waiting for a joke there, but I guess not.
Come on.
We're more highbrow than that.
I'm getting ready for season 4.
Oh, okay. That's a fair point. So, yeah. I mean, we mentioned this in the interview too, but I mean, you may think the film was just a list that says, this is where this is now, and this is where this is now, but it's not. I mean, Ryan manages to make an amazing narrative out of the topic, and it really makes you care about these things and where they wind up. And I have no idea how he did it, but that's the work of a really well-crafted film and a really talented filmmaker. And, when talking about one pavilion that met an unfortunate end late in the film, I mean, it even made me pretty upset. I mean, that shows how powerful the film and, the connection you make to these pavilions and these things at the fair, that's what it does to you when you're watching the film.
Sure, it's a piece of history that we thought was there and it's gone. I agree. Ryan really does an incredible job of telling the stories of what happened after the fair, not just making, and here's one big ball of twine, and here's this, but there's some intrigue in there, which is really, really great. Not only does he visit the icons of the fair, but he has interviewed some pretty famous people that worked on the fair or were influenced by it. Ryan interviewed our friends Bob Gurr, Marty Sklar, and Rolly Crump all about the Disney pavilions, and they offered some tantalizing input as to what happened. In addition to the resident Disney celebrities, Ryan interviewed a few other people that are sort of as obsessed with the fair as we are. Just a little.
Just kind of. I mean, some people may base an entire second film around a major comic book franchise around a World's Fair-like thing. I mean, not to throw out names or anything, but I mean, Jon Favreau. I mean, he talked to John, and I mean, that's incredible. That's really cool how these people are obsessed with the fair like we are too. But I mean, if you're into the fair, I think we both clearly highly recommend this movie. And it's, especially for us, it's a great way to wrap up the World's Fair segments to see how the fair lives on today in different aspects. It's a great snapshot into the past and a great way to see how these parts of it still live on today. So you can find the film at worldsfairmovie.com. You can order a DVD, which has a bunch of special features, or you can rent it on Vimeo. And I think you can download it there too, and you can stream it to whatever media device you have as well, which is pretty awesome. So
yeah, I watched it on the Roku, and it was in high definition and looked fantastic.
Heck yes.
So it was great.
So worldsfairmovie.com, definitely check it out, and I think it's like a million Communicore Weekly thumbs up.
At least.
Sometimes you might see it, sometimes you don't. Hey, look, what's that? It's a five-legged goat.
Even though it's no longer accessible to the public, the Court of Angels in New Orleans Square at Disneyland is still a gorgeous place to visit. And if you're lucky enough to get a reservation at Club 33, you'll get to hang out there for a few minutes before going up into the restaurant. Now, when you're done admiring the staircase and taking your photos there, because that's what everybody does, be sure to check out the fountain that's on the right-hand side of the staircase, because hanging above it is a lantern, lighting that small little area there. But if you look really closely, you'll see something inside the lantern. And of course, it's everyone's favorite pixie, Tinkerbell. This,
good.
of
I thought you
course,
were going to say me.
it's George.
It's like, what?
George is in the lantern, a mini
I was in
George.
the lantern? What? Anyway.
That'd be weird.
Yes, it
I
would.
don't know why you're wearing that weird dress in that lantern, George, but that's okay.
Shows off my legs.
That is a good point. Nobody wants to see it. But, of course, Tinkerbell in the lantern is a reference to the scene in the film in Peter Pan when Hook captures Tink and puts her inside the lantern and he questions her. So it's a cool little nod right there. I like it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. So, before we get into some of the bigger news, we just want to remind everybody to email your name, postal address, and your birthday, at least the day and the month, to communicoreweekly@gmail.com, because we've got some big surprises coming up that we're very excited about. So go ahead and email that information.
Some of those surprises are going out right now, essentially. Actually, by the time this airs, some of you may have received said things. So, who knows?
So excited. So,
even though I know this is the end of Season 3 and we're going to talk about all the great stuff coming in Season 4 in the Season 4 premiere, right now we need to talk about the change, a big change to the show itself, how you receive the show itself. If you listen to us on iTunes, you're in the clear. No worries, bro. You can continue listening on iTunes and you'll be okay. However, this is the last episode we will be posting on micechat.com and the MiceTube YouTube video channel. We love MiceChat. We love Dusty. He's been a great guy, and he's always been a big supporter of the show, and we thank him for the years that he has supported us. But starting in Season 4, we're going to be over on livefastdiepoor.com, hanging out with those dudes over there, and we got some cool stuff in store for that. So when you go to check out the Season 4 premiere, make sure you head over to livefastdiepoor.com. It'll be up there every Tuesday, just like it is on MiceChat for the last 3 years. So you just got to type in a new web address, and that's it. That's all you need to do, guys. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, so we're... No, I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay.
Not at all.
Plus, they got some cool articles there, too, that I write, and, George's going to write some stuff there, too. So you're going to get more of us over there. Aren't you excited?
Wait a minute, I'm going to write over there?
Oh, I forgot to tell you that.
When did that happen?
That happened right now. Now? Yeah, right now.
Yes, I know. All that money that we spent on acting lessons is really paying off.
Is it really paying off? Clearly it's not, because that was a terrible acting
That was
there.
Almost a great Robin Burgundy.
I am
almost a great Robin
Jeff
Burgundy.
Heimbach, actor.
You'll get Tobias in here, too. Okay, before we get off another set of rails, because we've gotten off so many, I don't even know where we are, we want to thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the Season 3 finale of Communicore Weekly.
Yes, please leave us a comment, maybe give us a rating on iTunes, let us know what you thought about Season 3, what you want to see in Season 4. We want to hear from you guys, so please do that.
Yes, and email us all of your important information at communicoreweekly@gmail.com, because like we said, we got some surprises.
Yes, we do. And of course, you can always like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Communicore Weekly, because I'm always posting photos and cool stuff over there.
Yep. And follow us on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Imaginerding, and he's at Jeff Heimbach.
And of course, you can give us a call on the Communicore Weekly Goat line at 424-785-4628.
And get your copy of Communicore Weekly, the musical, today, before it goes out of print.
Maybe? Acting
Maybe?
lessons still not working for us. Man.
Yeah, probably not. So, but you can grab a copy on Amazon, CD Baby, or iTunes, or listen for free on Google Play and Spotify.
Heck yes. And of course, visit the Community Store at communicoreweekly.com and click on the store link for some awesome t-shirts.
Yes, for Jeff Heimbach, I'm George Taylor.
And for George Taylor, I'm Jeff Heimbach. Thanks so much for listening, guys and gals. We'll see you next season on Communicore Weekly, the greatest online show.
luminaries.